to go?
Yep.
All right. Hello, this is Ross Ulbricht. I'm calling you today from prison, from a maximum security federal penitentiary. We don't have much time together today, and I don't know if I'll get another chance to talk to you like this. I'll say as much as I can, but when it's time to go, I'll have to hang up and go back to my cell. I have lost my freedom. That's what I want to talk to you about today. I want you to understand what it means to lose your freedom. Bitcoin has been transforming our world since that very first block in the blockchain. And let me tell you something. We are just getting started. Wherever Bitcoin has been embraced, anywhere in the world, freedom and equality follow. Bitcoin is the embodiment of freedom. So now, look what we have. On one side, we have loss of freedom. We have despair and darkness. And on the other side, we have Bitcoin. We have freedom, equality, and hope. The two can't sit side by side, so the darkness has to be kept out of sight. It has to be ignored and forgotten. But listen, here I am. I'm crying out from that very same darkness. This is a cry for help. My mother can't do this by herself. And I'm crying out not just for me, but for all of us. We need your help. We need you to care. We need you to look at the stark contrast between the freedom of Bitcoin on the one hand and what it means to be locked in a cage until you die. We have a choice. Today, right now, do we ignore what's happening? The loss of freedom? The dehumanization? Or do we wake up? Listen, Bitcoin is strong. Bitcoin is powerful. We are powerful. And our work is not over. It's time to wake up. It's time to take the next step. I've spent the last 8 years watching Bitcoin grow up from in here. I've seen incredible innovation. I've seen inspiring courage. We didn't know how things would turn out for Bitcoin back in the beginning, but over the years, I've been continually impressed with what you've accomplished. I am proud of you, and I have no doubt we can do anything we set our minds to. We are transforming the global economy. We have brought a taste of freedom and equality to far corners of the world. I know we can transform criminal justice too. And now, today, I challenge you to set your sights on the hardest problems. I challenge you to shine Bitcoin's light into the darkest places. I challenge you to set us free. We need more miracles. I have to go soon. I don't want to go. I don't want to go back to that cell. I want to be there with you. It's called. You've done so much for me today. Talking with you today is the most freedom I've felt in a long, long time. Thank you. Thank you for giving me your attention. I will never forget this day. The memory of this day. This can never be taken from us. Okay.
This call is from a federal prison.
I'm going to go now. Thank you. Goodbye.
Happy Bitcoin Tuesday, freaks. It's your host, Odell, here for another Citadel Dispatch, the interactive live show focused on actionable Bitcoin and freedom tech discussion. That intro was no other than Ross Ulbricht. He did that interview almost 4 years ago in Miami at the Bitcoin conference in Miami from federal prison. He's been in jail for 12 years now for a nonviolent crime. He should hopefully be freed any day now. I know there's many of us that are sitting on pins and needles, hoping it happens sooner rather than later. I was hoping that it would happen actually before we went live, but regardless, it's incredibly important to highlight. I would say that there's a lot of things I've been frustrated with the Bitcoin community as we've grown bigger. Um, but it's super inspiring and powerful to see people rally around this cause to free Ross. So hopefully we'll see that very soon. He's been in jail for 12 years now. And I would just say, like, personally, I was there when that interview happened, and I was backstage, and immediately following it, after the prison gave permission to the interview, his only interview, they threw him in the hole. They threw him in solitary confinement, and I was there with his mother. And from that point on, I knew it was impossible for us to have won without him out. So hopefully it's imminent. And with all that said, I have a great conversation live from a beach somewhere. So you might hear some beach noises in the background. If it gets really bad, tell us and we'll evacuate the beach. But I'm live here with Jack Dorsey, founder of Twitter and Square. Now Twitter's called X. Now Square is called Block. How's it going, Jack?
I'm good. Thank you. I think I've been on almost every other Bitcoin podcast than before this one. So I've just been waiting for the invite. This is the final boss.
So technically, if you've been a listener for Citadel Dispatch, I've had Jack on the feed twice. We had on-stage conversations in Riga that I then syndicated out on the feed. But this is
Doesn't count.
Indeed his first time on a proper Citadel Dispatch. It is Citadel Dispatch 150, so it's a very special number. It's an honor to have you here for such a special number.
Thank you. What's special about the number?
150, it's a round, large number. Do you not think 150 is a special number?
I think it's a great number. Congrats on doing 150 of them. Did the Riga one count in the 150?
No, I don't count when I syndicate the...
All right, so what number are you actually at, though?
Significantly higher than 150. I don't know, probably over 200. But yeah, I only count the real dispatches, and it's good to have you. I would just say to the freaks, I asked Jack to go on Rogan to speak the good word of Bitcoin and Nostr, and he refused to go on Rogan and said instead he was going to come on Citadel Dispatch. So that's an honor.
I think it's a much deeper and understanding audience than Rogan. I've also been on him twice. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know if a third time would actually help.
I feel like it's a different moment. You know, it's you're on the next chapter now.
It could be.
So with all that, I mean, I don't know where to start. We have a lot to talk about. It seems like no one's complaining about our sound quality yet, which is impressive.
Like, can you tell who's zapping as well?
Yeah, we can see who's zapping. Zaps? You see the zaps? I mean, they're not really zapping that much, but they can zap. We
haven't really said anything.
We have AK zapped 2.1 thousand sats. That's the most sats zapped so far. If you're listening on YouTube, you can find the Nostr live chat that is streamed on screen at citadeldispatch.com, along with all the other links for the show. You do not need a Nostr account to use it, and it has Bitcoin payments built in. We call them zaps. So that is awesome. I mean, I think a great place to start is, why with the powerful words that came from Ross, like, why have you focused so much of your life on Bitcoin? Why should people care about Bitcoin?
I think it's, for me, it's about, like, these open protocols. For me, the reason it resonated right away was that's how I grew up. Like, I grew up on the only reason I am where I am and able to do what I do is because of the grace of so many other open source developers and people who actually built protocols that were open and anyone could build on top of them, from SMTP to HTTP to FTP, Gopher, Usenet back in the day, IRC, like the golden age of the internet when everything was truly decentralized, and it just felt wild. It felt like a wild west, and Bitcoin, when I first encountered it, felt like that wild west. It felt like undefined, and it felt vast at the same time. And it felt vast because it was on something really big, which is money. And during the time it came out, I was just starting a company called Square, which is a financial services company that has to work with Visa and MasterCard. We started with the idea in December of 2008. I remember going back to St. Louis, to my hometown, to meet um, this guy Jim McKelvey, who was my boss when I was 15 years old, and we wanted to work together again. And then in January, February 2009, we started building. And at that time, Bitcoin and the white paper came out, and we spent 9 months asking for permission from Visa and MasterCard just to let us run a pilot of small merchants. Small merchants couldn't get through to start accepting credit cards because they had to go through a credit check. And we had to ask permission of Visa to allow us to serve 100 merchants and then 1,000 merchants. And whoops, we coded the constraint wrong, so it actually ends up we're serving 5,000 merchants. And eventually we got to 10,000 and 100,000. Eventually they changed the rules for us. But just the fact that we had to go through all that, instead of just building on something that was open, as you would expect on the internet, uh, painted the picture crystal clear for me. And then when I was a kid, I loved alt cypherpunks. I loved Usenet. I loved what those guys were doing. I followed the mailing list. Wired back in the day was like wild. Like it was underground back then, and it was following all of that activity, starting with PGP and Philip Zimmerman, and exporting the code by Adam Back on a T-shirt in Perl. Like all that was just like that was my joy. I wasn't working in that space, but it was my joy. So I think it's important because it gives us permissionless technology, and it's not the only one, but it's the one that matters the most right now because we can actually build on top of it. And we can build our livelihoods on top of it, and people can, choose different paths instead of a typical corporate job to go down a path of being a developer and getting a grant from someone like OpenSats and like doing what they love every single day. And I think that only expands as Bitcoin becomes more and more accessible. I think that's the only blockade right now, and more valuable to people. Um, my biggest worry is that it becomes irrelevant, and I think that irrelevance comes from people not finding the use case and the value in it. And that's what I want to do to make sure it has value, to make sure it has relevance, to make sure it's a currency, not just a digital gold store of value, but actually it's used every single day in opposition of all the permission systems, which I have to deal with every day of my life for the past almost 16 years.
Yeah, I mean, so you're literally a graybeard. I'm looking at your graybeard right now. How do you wrestle with this, like Bitcoin coming of age this last year? With Bitcoin ETFs and now with this idea of strategic Bitcoin reserve and governments stacking Bitcoin in their treasury and companies like MicroStrategy accumulating god tier levels of Bitcoin, with that hope for what seems you were describing as this hope for this freedom money, this money that people can spend without permission and use as they see fit.
I think Bitcoin is the next currency because it's been resilient to so many tests and it's met so many challenges head on, from its earliest days to the block size wars to commercialization to today. I don't think it's the ETFs, to be honest. I don't think it's corporations owning it. I don't think it's strategic government reserves. I think it's something like Trump coin. I think for someone who was promoting Bitcoin and saying that we're going to use it as a strategic reserve, and then to create a new quote unquote digital asset around a meme that everyone bought into, and that seems to be growing in some regards. That to me feels pretty dangerous, just because it's distracting. It's distracting away from like what Bitcoin can do, and we've seen this in Bitcoin for quite some time. These distractions come up, and people go crazy for them, and we lose core developers, we lose attention, we lose people who are trying to make Bitcoin more accessible, because the Ethereum network has more APIs and it has more developer attention. Now it's Solana, and there'll be another thing. And if Bitcoin can't keep that developer attention, I think we become more and more irrelevant, because people are not making it as accessible, and they're not building the interfaces for it. They're not building the use cases for it. So I see all these things as a challenge. I believe in my heart Bitcoin will overcome when people see through the superficial aspects of it, and the lightness of it. Um, these like the shit coins, and all the meme coins and whatnot. But it's going to be challenging, because people are going to go there, and they're going to follow it.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. I want to start with your comment about the ETFs. So it sounds like you don't think the ETFs are necessarily a good thing. Do you think they're explicitly a bad thing, though?
I don't think they're a good thing or a bad thing. I think they're a distracting thing. As you know, you don't own your Bitcoin unless you own your keys, and this is like another level of indirection to buy Bitcoin. You can make the argument that you meet people where they are, and people might be with their brokerages and on Wall Street and want a common vehicle to buy these things. And then you can make the argument that eventually they'll convert it, but people are lazy as well. And I think it has the distraction of potentially keeping it more store of value, rather than something I can use on a daily basis to buy my food, to buy a coffee, to pay a babysitter, pay for services, and actually transact around the world, do remittance around the world. So I think they're neutral, but it's a question of like, how do people go down the rabbit hole? Do people actually pull the thread on what this actually means? Do people want to be their own bank? Do people want to have their own keys, and actually go into this permissionless land where they have the responsibility over it? And that's scary, because when you have responsibility on what might be a lot of money to some people, then I don't want to lose it, and I don't want that responsibility. I want to pay someone else to do it. I want an abstraction of an abstraction to deal with it, and I know it's there because I know the brokerage and all these things. So I don't know. You meet people where they are; it makes sense. But like, if we don't do the other half of enabling people and having people ask the question, why go deeper and why pull the thread, then I think Bitcoin becomes irrelevant. It's only going to be one use case, which is the store of value and the trading platform, instead of what we all know it can be. If you just go back to the white paper, what is it? It's electronic cash, peer-to-peer electronic cash. Where is that vision right now? It's distracted right now by the ETFs. It's distracted by the BlackRocks. I'm grateful for them because they validate, and more value. The more that number goes up, the more valuable it is, and the more people want to work on it, and the more people turn their heads towards it. But it can also pause us as well if we get too comfortable there.
I think there's a decent argument that it can kind of breed some complacency. It's like you already have exposure. You think you already have exposure. You buy the ETF on Charles Schwab or call your broker or whatever, and you think you have exposure, and then you just stop there. You're content
Exactly.
as a result.
I check that box. Done.
But also at the same time, right? I think it clearly opens up Bitcoin to a larger market in terms of like the Bitcoinization of finance, and it definitely increases Bitcoin holders' purchasing power. And if you're talking about developers that are receiving OpenSats grants, or Bitcoiners around the world that are self-custodying their Bitcoin and trying to build strong local communities, the fact that they get increased purchasing power is obviously a significant benefit.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Have you noticed that there's this weird phenomenon where it's like anything that increases the price of Bitcoin is perceived as bad by a certain subset of the Bitcoin community?
Yeah, I've seen that. I don't. I go back and forth. I mean, again, like it's where's the attention? I think when we're in the heat of moment of the price going up all the time, people tend to focus on that, and they tend to focus less on what does Bitcoin need to actually scale to the next 100 million people. And it needs a lot. Like it needs a lot of accessibility and needs better key management. People need to feel like safe with taking on that responsibility that they're not going to lose it. And but at the same time, like it does show that people actually value this. I mean, this is all made up, right? It's a belief system. This made up invention happens to be mathematically sound, and we have a lot of believers, and that price is an indication of the belief. But there also has to be the corresponding fundamentals underneath. And if it's just digital gold, then it's just as good as a meme coin. Like if it provides no other utility to people and they're not using it every day for that, then it is a meme coin ultimately over time. And that would be a shame.
I mean, you keep bringing it back to Trump coin. We're going to talk about Trump coin in a
I
little
said
bit.
meme coin.
I mean, Trump coin is the meme coin of the day right now, the soup du jour.
I think Melania is, no?
By the way, the zaps keep flowing. Thank you, freaks, for supporting the show. I see you. But I want to, before we get there, so ETFs, we're talking about ETFs. What's your opinion on this trend of companies, public companies specifically, but also private companies stacking Bitcoin on their balance sheet? MicroStrategy is the most obvious example with 460,000 Bitcoin. But even your business, Block, has a little over 8,000 Bitcoin on its balance sheet, and I believe you're actively stacking.
We DCA into larger amounts.
Sets.
We're stacking sets, stacking bits, but the sats denomination.
That's not on the list of topics.
So, yeah, I mean, I think I don't know for us we have a lot of development work in Bitcoin, and if I could pick one thing, it would be that. If I could pick two things, it would be what we're doing with Spiral. If I could pick three things, it would be the education that we try to do around Bitcoin, and specifically around Cash App customers and BitKey customers. And then four would be like having Bitcoin as a company because it's a hedge against anything going on. We didn't buy a lot relative to someone like MicroStrategy because one, I don't feel good about just companies owning all the supply and all the Bitcoin. Two, we have a business, and that was a challenge business, and he kind of turned it into a different sort of business. And he was early before the ETFs, and like it made sense. But we have a business; it's growing, it's strong. But having it as a reserve just in case, I think makes a lot of sense, and it can certainly potentially help us in the future. But I don't know how long we do this for. I feel like we have enough to keep us happy. We don't need to have more. We need to facilitate more, and that's what I would rather. That's what I would rather put our attention on.
Okay, that all makes sense to me. I would say though that I think that ultimately the goal of every business in the world should be to stack as much Bitcoin as possible. The goal of every individual, probably the goal of every functioning government.
Yeah, you said this, Enrico. Maybe the goal is not stack as much as possible, but use it and transact in it as much as possible. I'd be down for that.
Okay.
Like paying our vendors and paying our employees.
Do you do any of that?
We pay all the Spiral people with Bitcoin.
Oh, that's awesome.
We don't have any vendors I'm aware of that accept Bitcoin, but we would. We have it set up for that, and we're working so that our employees can also convert to Bitcoin. They can do it right now if they put their paycheck in Cash App and do the auto convert into Bitcoin through Cash App. So we have all the tools available. It's just not something that's dominant across the entire company yet.
So, I mean, on that note, the year is 2025. Why can't people pay Bitcoin at Square terminals?
We haven't seen the usage on the currency side that we want, and we actually went to sellers and we asked them if you could only have one thing from us, would it be auto convert into Bitcoin a percentage of your revenue, or would it be accept Bitcoin? Nearly 100% said auto convert. So we built that because it's not easy either. Like, just doing that. And they have a slider that can go, from 0 to, I don't know what the limit is, maybe 50% auto convert their Bitcoin. And sellers actually use it. They love it. And I think if we're to if we're to if we're to play out the roadmap for you know hyper Bitcoinization and what mass adoption, I think store value does make sense. And then, building on that, when more and more sellers have it or more and more people have it, they can actually use it. Maybe remittance is the next thing, maybe like a B2B thing, and then more consumer to consumer. But there's places outside the US and outside Europe that accept it almost every day. Like we're in one of those countries right now. And I've paid dinner here. I've paid for coffee with Bitcoin with my BitKey wallet. I've paid with Lightning. I paid on chain. It all works. There's no questions from the merchant. They're happy to accept it. And like we just don't have that in the United States right now. And I don't think just us building it into the terminal would create it because not enough people have Bitcoin in their wallets or know how to spend it in the US yet. And I think Strike tried this with some of the terminals or a partnership with the terminals at some of the department stores. And
the bear market crushed that one. We never really got it out the door.
Well, see, there you go. But like, it's not easy. Eventually, we will have acceptance on Square terminals.
Why do you think
that? I guarantee.
I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, I've noticed the same thing. We'll run Bitcoin meetups in Nashville, Tennessee, one of the Bitcoin capitals of the United States, and we'll have 250 ride or die Bitcoiners come to the meetup, and we make sure that there's a food vendor there, a local food vendor there, seed oil free, and we'll onboard her to Bitcoin so she can accept Bitcoin. And it's literally like 2% of people pay with Bitcoin. But then you're outside of the U.S., and these are like the most ride or die Bitcoiners, right?
Ones that are asking why can't you accept Bitcoin on Square terminal?
So why adoption? We're seeing the actual currency style adoption. I think it's a use case outside of the U.S., but not in the U.S.
It's a community momentum thing. Like the isolated, we don't have a strong sense of community. Like in a town that we're in, like right now, it's a very small town, and when people see other people use Bitcoin, they start, and the spreads because it's word of mouth, and they're not Bitcoiners at all. Like these people are not Bitcoiners, but they're using it because they recognize what it's doing for the merchant, and they recognize what it's doing for them, and they happen to have it. But I think the biggest right here is like getting the Bitcoin. It's a little bit easier here, but getting it, why do you get it? I mean, that goes back to the no up thing. And then it's like, okay, does it keep going up or do I spend this? Do I buy my meal with it? All these reasons, but I think the tightness of the community is a big factor.
Historically, I thought part of it was that we have such good financial infrastructure. And I know it's not perfect. People get debanked all the time, but we have such good financial infrastructure in the United States, particularly in terms of credit cards and stuff. And that's the reason. But then you come down here and like every vendor accepts Apple Pay. If anything, it's easier to not travel with a wallet here than it is in America.
Well, I think the U.S. just building on what I said earlier. I think the U.S. has one of the worst financial systems because it's all monopolies and duopolies, and it's all permission. You go to a place like Kenya or anywhere in Africa, and you have M-Pesa, and M-Pesa works instantly. Every single person there can access M-Pesa. You go to Latin America, a place like Costa Rica, you have SEMPE. Every single person there can use it instantly. All they need is a phone number. And it works. Like, it just works. And you don't need things like Apple Pay. You don't need things like credit cards. You don't need things like even Bitcoin. So it's just like a choice. And it happened to be the case that a lot of countries outside the U.S. and Europe, they built these payment systems off phone credits. So it was the telecoms. They would convert the phone credits to money. It was the original like meme coin, right? It was the original shitcoin, and like these credits go over, and the merchant accepts them, and they're settled and they're done. They go into the bank account easily.
Should have named this rip meme coins with Jack. That clearly
it's the topic of the day. Like
it's living rent free in your head.
It's disappointing.
So real quick, I mean, so you think it's a regulation thing? You think it's mostly a regulation thing in the United States?
I don't think it's a regulation thing. I think it's a corporate thing. I think like Visa carved out their area, the banks carved out their area. They're they're not necessarily operable networks and protocols across these things. For those of you who are old enough, do you remember when SMS was just getting started?
Yeah, of course.
Did you have Verizon or AT&T Singular?
I mean, I don't feel comfortable stating which one, but I had one of them.
No, back then.
And
you had one of the two.
I did. I had one of the two.
So
correct.
Verizon was on the CDMA protocol, and AT&T was on the Pan Global GMS protocol. And do you remember the day that you could send a text message from a Verizon phone to a Singular AT&T phone? It was 2005.
But there was some years there where you couldn't do that, right?
There were 10 years. GSM was a standard for 10 years around the world. You could send text messages for 10 years before a text message from AT&T to Verizon
was in its own little bubble.
It had its, and you couldn't send. And then the iPhone like really juiced that up in 2000. A bit, and made them work together. But that's exactly what the U.S. financial system is. They're all different protocols. They all want to own them. They all have to figure out like how to interoperate with one another. The U.S. government just created this new protocol that's supposed to catch us up with the rest of Europe. I forget the name of it right now, but it's there, and it's probably a path towards a central bank digital currency. It would certainly make one easier, but it definitely solves the problem of like, for 40 years now, you all have had problems like sending money quickly, which is the only reason, by the way, that Venmo and Cash App exist and PayPal, because we abstracted the layer away and we settled above those layers, and it didn't matter what bank you were on. It didn't matter what card you used. You would get money instantly. We can't do that with Cash App in like Europe because it's fast and free right now already, the peer-to-peer. So, that's where Bitcoin comes in. Do you want these government protocols? Do you want the corporate protocols that don't work together? Or do you want a protocol owned by the people?
I mean, but by that logic, it kind of seems that if you do have a at least quasi CBDC with like a relatively open API, in the short term, Bitcoin adoption actually can get bootstrapped quicker, right?
Maybe.
To your M-Pesa point, like M-Pesa is like
maybe.
kind of a quasi
this is you arguing for CBDCs?
No, I just think it's kind of fascinating because that's just an interesting point, and I think we're going there, right? Like I think in the West, like the way CBDCs look is they're all going to be corporate led, but there's going to be public-private partnerships, right?
Yeah.
So all the people that are saying that they're anti-CBDC will still use like X money, or USDC or whatever, or Tether, whatever it becomes.
Yeah, if you see them all as on-ramps, and certainly can be beneficial, but then the question is, why do people go to Bitcoin?
Right. Well, because you can't take it.
What's the value?
No permission required.
Yep.
And
how important is that to people right now?
What's important when they get on
versus their convenience. Exactly.
When they get rugged, it becomes important.
But there's other things that can lead them there. Like permissionless is not it. Like we can build other utility on top of Bitcoin that like people run to instead of run away from the banks because they got rugged or because they got shut down. Like we're still in this mode of like people are running away from a thing to get to Bitcoin instead of like running to Bitcoin to get to it. And I know that a lot of like permissionless folks and cypherpunks are running to Bitcoin for the right reasons, but that's not 99% of the population.
Yeah, no, I've noticed this as well. I mean, you got to make it convenient. You have to make it accessible.
We have to make it convenient.
The most convenient option.
Yes.
And I think Nostr is going to play a really big role in that. I want to get to, but before we go to Nostr, let's talk about your new favorite investment, Trump Coin. Do you really think it's what is your opinion on that?
Um, I think it's I think it's very, very disappointing that people are buying into it, and there's what is the foundation of it? Like, what can you do with it? And I know that like the Jamie Dimons of the world and others say that this is the same as Bitcoin, like it has no intrinsic value and like you can't do anything, but we know that's not the case. Like we know the properties of Bitcoin. We know the censorship resistance. We know the decentralization. Um, but people are running to something that they can own a piece of and make a little bit of money of on. I mean, it's a casino. Like we made a conscious decision not to build a casino and a cash app to stay Bitcoin only because of the underlying principles of it and because we wanted the internet to have an open protocol for money transmission. And we don't see that in ETH. We don't see that in Hamster Coin. We don't see that in, N times 1 million name coins. We see it only in Bitcoin. And there might be another thing that comes in the future that is better than Bitcoin in that regard, but I don't see it. I don't think anyone I've talked to has seen it. And I think anything that takes away from that is distracting. So I don't know. It feels like a recipe for disaster. But who knows? Anything can happen. Maybe it's the currency of the country at some point.
It's not going to be. Um, I think it's funny that every cycle people think. I hear so many people say like, "This is the end. There's going to be no more shitcoins." I think shitcoins will be here forever. I think
Yeah,
because people like to gamble.
they have been here forever. They're coupons and back
Yeah.
in the day. Like it's the same thing. It's a
But they
credit system.
change which ones they are. Like ETH, for instance, right now is in complete disaster mode, right? And it seems
Yep.
like it's like Solana's cycle and the memes of the Solana cycle or whatever. And I really don't think of them as a threat to Bitcoin at all. I think of them as they're definitely a distraction, and they're just a threat to the people that choose to speculate on them instead of saving Bitcoin and spending Bitcoin.
Yes.
But they're
But
not a threat to the Bitcoin protocol.
they are because they're distracting. Because we have the potential of people wanting to work on the Bitcoin protocol, and continue to make it more secure and safer and more resilient goes down. Not by a lot, but it certainly goes down. Ethereum did that to us. Um, the NFTs did that to us. Like that's where the money was, and they followed the money, and they followed the developer ecosystem and the velocity.
Do you,
The
do,
Web3, the Web3.
do you think there's an argument, and I hear this a lot because of how I choose to spend my time. Do you think there's an argument by some Bitcoiners that Nostr is a distraction
From what?
from Bitcoin?
No. It might be a distraction from like other social media protocols, but is Bitcoin our social media protocol as well? Do you think we need one? If you answer that question yes, then we need to work on something that helps. And like the fact that like we have Bitcoin built into this thing, and the fact that, as you have said, it'll probably be the the way that people onboard onto Bitcoin because they're actually creating content and receiving sats for it, and they're receiving Bitcoin. I've converted so many people because of Zaps. They feel that little electricity, like the phone buzz a bit, and they see that money goes in their wallet, and they're hooked. And then they have to deal with the fact that I'm following 111 people I don't know. I need to go and follow them. Like, where do I find the people that I'm actually interested in, and the topics I'm actually interested in? And maybe that's too much work, and they forget the 20 cents that they got. But if they get like $5, or they have like some like incredible content, and like it goes viral, and they make money on it, they're gonna stick. They're gonna figure it out, and they're gonna work at it. And that's the accessibility we need. So I think Nostr is only symbiotic and only positive. And I think the Bitcoiners who are saying Nostr is a distraction are probably doing some distracting things right now.
I mean, that's 100% guaranteed. Especially in the modern age, people tend to get distracted very easily. But I definitely agree with you, which is why I spend so much time on Nostr and focused on Nostr. I mean, I think Nostr will effectively, if done right, bootstraps Bitcoin in a big way. So if you focus on Nostr, you're effectively focusing on Bitcoin adoption,
100%.
and specifically Bitcoin adoption as freedom money. Like, to your point about Bitcoin as like an investment, something you buy in Charles Schwab, versus Bitcoin as freedom money. I think a lot of that has to do with where people interact with it first, right? Like, if you're calling your broker to buy Bitcoin, or even if you're going on Cash App where stocks are sold and you're buying Bitcoin on Cash App,
Yep.
or even something like Strike that is Bitcoin only, but that you're like explicitly going on there to buy Bitcoin, is completely different than your first experience with Bitcoin being a shitpost that some stranger zaps you money for, right? It's like,
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think back to that concept of meeting people where they are. Like, it's just a question of what's the next step. Buying from an ETF and making my way to a non-custodial wallet feels very challenging. Posting something on Nostr and then receiving some zaps and making my way to a non-custodial wallet feels very accessible and feels very realistic. So, like, I do think there's a spectrum always, but I'm a huge believer in Nostr. I'm a huge believer more in just open protocols, and I think we need one for social media, and we need one for an ecosystem of apps to compete with, like, the closed wall app stores and Google Play and the app stores of the world. And we have this protocol, so let's build on it. It's working.
by the way, I see Rob Hamilton in the comments saying, no one tell Parker Nostr isn't a distraction. You're familiar with Parker Lewis?
Yes.
He's the one who tells me the most that it's a distraction
Oh,
of
okay.
Bitcoin.
And what's distracting from what?
From Bitcoin.
But what are you not doing in Bitcoin because you're doing in Nostr?
Well, it's like a combination, right? So like OpenSats has a Nostr fund where we support a bunch of Nostr developers in addition to Bitcoin developers, right? And 1031 is a venture fund where we support Nostr companies in addition to predominantly Bitcoin companies. So he sees more and more. I mean, Nostr is something that was bootstrapped by Bitcoiners, right? It's
Yep.
something that the majority of our developers were Bitcoin developers first, right? And now they're working on Nostr. So I don't think it's without. I don't think the perspective is like completely crazy. I think it lacks merit and it's invalid. But
Hmm. Well,
I
given
understand where he's coming from, right?
given your thesis is Nostr is a way to bootstrap Bitcoin, then it's not a distraction. Like, he might not be seeing that thesis and that endpoint, right?
Right. He thinks Nostr will fail and
Right.
that we all should just use X,
And that feels like a failure.
which I think
Like, if we just have one
A
option.
lot of Bitcoiners think that. The overwhelming majority of Bitcoiners think that
Yeah.
right now, probably, right?
I don't know. I don't know. I think it depends on how Bitcoin they are, I guess. Like, are they are they there for the protocol? Are they there for the attributes? And if so, like, why does that not extend to other properties such as social media? And I don't know why you wouldn't want that. At least having that option, at least preparing something just in case everything does go down, or these companies go out of business, or they get corrupted, or they get owned by the state. Like, don't you want something that you can actually build your identity on, and like it stays around, and you get to choose whether it where it exists and if it exists? And the same is true for your content. Don't you want that? Because that's why you're in Bitcoin, right? Because you want it for money, and money is content. It's the same thing. These are very, very symbiotic and parallel protocols. Um, but I don't think people value the content as much, and I think that's one of those phases that we'll enter in when they'll start appreciating why we should be valuing the content and why we should not allow corporations to own it, but that we can permission them in to use it. And like that to me is what Nostr enables ultimately.
So I see someone in the comments asking why we have no video today, Jack. Why do we have no video?
I've barely seen any Citadel dispatch with video. Most of them are this clock.
The best ones are no video. That's why.
The best ones are no videos.
And also, we're sitting on a beautiful beach. We have a great view right now.
We're watching the sunset.
We're legit watching the sunset. It's a sunset.
It's
rip.
amazing because we don't actually have to look at each other. We can just look at the sunset and talk.
We're not faced at each other. We're faced at the water.
It takes that social awkwardness away.
Because it is usually awkward with you, you know?
Super awkward.
So I want to, I mean, you bootstrapped Twitter, right? Which, I mean, I've absolutely loved Twitter. It was my only social media for a decade before Nostr existed. And I've been, you know, mission focused for the last few years to bootstrap Nostr. And I mean, first of all, you definitely do not get enough credit for the 0 to 1 problem, like getting critical momentum into something like Twitter.
We got it in the Nostr as well, though.
But so, I mean, so that's my question for you. Like, how do you think about the bootstrap problem with something like Nostr? And I guess before that, why don't you just give, there might be a bunch of listeners right now that have no idea what Nostr is. It's the first time listening to Citadel Dispatch. Just give a brief, what is Nostr? Why should people care? And then I want to jump into the bootstrap problem.
Well, Nostr, so like, I don't know how long ago it was, maybe 4 years ago, we decided that like Twitter cannot be the view, the protocol, and the distribution mechanism all in one. For us to really get all the tweets, for us to really get all the content, for us to be the global consciousness, like we had to open the doors. And that's how we started. We had a completely open API. Anyone could write to it. Anyone could read from it. You could build whatever client you wanted. And then we had our CEO who came in after me, and then after the other one. The company wanted to go public, and all that was closed down because of fears about other clients taking all the traffic, yada, yada, yada. So, like, the protocol aspect of Twitter failed when it went public. And we wanted to get back to that. I wanted to get back to that. That's why we created it. It's hard to be a public company, and you have a lot of different incentives that are not aligned with the people you're actually serving, and we can talk about that. But we wanted to create a protocol. I have this tweet storm called around Blue Sky, which was like, we're going to fund a protocol, and we're looking for people to build it and to run it. We'll fund it for years out, at least 5 and beyond. And we'll end up using it if it's good enough. It'll be our protocol layer, and we'll be the client on top of it. And the reason we did that is because we would get more content, and our algorithms would be better, our business models could be better, because there's just more content. So it's funny because I didn't know this at the time, but this guy named Fiat Jaff actually visited the community and talked with one of our people at Twitter who was interviewing developers to take on this role. And for some reason, I don't know if it was Fiat Jaff, it probably was, or if it was us, we chose not to work together. And we chose a woman named Jay to build Blue Sky. And we funded her, and this was, just after Elon. We funded her before Elon bought it, and then she was on her own and building on a structure right after. And she started talking about it like investors, and she was worried about not getting more money because Elon bought it, and he was shutting a bunch of things down, and these are all valid concerns. And I started to get nervous, and I wanted to shift my funding to more internet permissionless stuff, and I asked like, what should I be looking at to fund this space? And someone tweeted at me Nostr, and I went to Fiat Jaff's GitHub, and there's a page. I know this is a long entry to the description of this, but basically this page described every single thing that was wrong with Twitter, and here is the fix, but it's open, it's decentralized, and anyone can build on top of it, and anyone can improve it with these things called NIPs. But effectively, it's a protocol for social media. Instead of a username and password or an email address and a password, it's a key pair. So you have a secret key and a public key, which you can give out to people and they can follow you. It's the only one out there that actually verifies you are you because of the cryptographic security, as long as you keep that secret key safe. It's the only one out there that all data you create, you sign with your key, so that they can verify it's you. And that's important in the age of AI and deepfakes and whatnot. It's the only one out there that you can state, I want to use this client, but actually, I don't like that client anymore. I want to use this client. And your follow graph and all your tweets, all your posts go with you, and you can see them in the same way that you saw in the different client. And it's the only one that you can say, like, I know that this is going to exist for as long as I want it to. A company can't take it down. The protocol engineers can't take it down. The government can't take it down. It exists. It's permanent. If I choose it to be permanent, and my identity is permanent if I choose. No company can do that. No company can say that. There's no other protocol I know of in social media that can say that. None. They're all like captured in some way, whether they be the Ethereum-based ones or the Solana-based ones or ones that companies are building that they start or quote unquote bootstrap and then they're going to give to the community. They're not. Um, Nostr is it, and I found it, and I'm like, oh man, this is it. I I was like, oh, Blue Sky was probably the wrong answer. There's a lot of good ideas in Blue Sky, but like this is what I wanted, of just something raw, just something like open. Again, feeling like that early internet. Like that's what Fiat Jeff created, and that's what the community still feels like today. It's a significant developer community. They're very excited. They're building amazing stuff. Um, and if you want social media on your terms, and you still want to interop with the X's of the world and the Mastodons and the True Socials and the Blue Skies, Nostr is probably going to be it because it's the only one that can say it's neutral. The only one. Everyone else is captured in some way.
I mean, I think that's a pretty cool thing to highlight because the way Nostr's built, the only reason you can't see everything that's available throughout the internet in your Nostr app is because of various walled gardens that are put up. If those walled gardens didn't exist, you could very easily bridge every X post or every Facebook post or every TikTok post over to Nostr without permission. And you can view it and you can interact with it and you can share it. But that's not the case because everything's a walled garden. So anyway, to my point earlier, I think that was a good intro description, albeit long.
I mean,
What-
cut me off anytime.
I'm not going to cut you off. You're the star of the show right now. I've been told I cut people off too much. I'm trying to work on it. I'm not a professional podcaster. I just like freedom tech, and I love the
Influencer
freaks.
VC.
Definitely not an influencer.
Influencer anarchist VC.
Influencers don't go Nostr only because of the bootstrap problem.
They do. You're our first influencer that has gone Nostr only.
Did you say anarchist VC?
Yes.
I respect that. Thank you for the compliment. So what do you think about do we have a bootstrap problem? Like, how do you think about adoption to Nostr so far? Is it good? Does it need work? Is there major concerns there? How do we fix it?
I'll tell you how we started Twitter. We sent invites out to our friends. Our friends happened to be tech bloggers that went to South by Southwest. Our friends, during the second Southwest that we were alive, in 2007, they went to South by Southwest and they said, if you want to follow what tracks I'm going to, what parties I'm going to be at, follow me on Twitter. Here's a short code. You type follow and then my name on your phone, and the thing blew up. And that was it. It had a moment. It had some attention. We were prepared for it. It's not luck. It's just being ready for it. And Nostr is already bootstrapped. It's bootstrapped with Bitcoiners. I don't know if you've seen it the past 2 weeks, especially with TikTok, but like there are real artists getting on, and that makes me so happy because like for an artist, like principally this is it. Like, I own my artwork. Nobody can say anything. I can verify it with my own identity. I can put it up in full resolution in the way that I wish. I can build my audience in the way that I wish. I can get paid for it. We both know a DJ um, who just got on Nostr, and he's been putting his work up, and he's been getting sats for it, and his mind was blown. He's like, "What? like, like, what is this?" And that's when the ball starts rolling. And during that time, it felt very slow. In the moment, is like at South by Southwest, I think we were 10,000 people using it, and then over the next year, it went up to 500,000. Right, and it kind of felt fast and felt slow in the moment, and also retrospectively. But I don't think we have to worry about that. We are bootstrapped, and more people are finding it because of that. And there's going to be events in the world that cause people's attention to go towards Nostr, and there are going to be things that we build that people just want. Zaps is one of those things. Like, it's a reason to run a Nostr. I can get paid instantly, KYC free, um, and actually feel Bitcoin and feel a platform that I can actually own and use, and I have entire control over that. It just feels super, super magical. But to answer your question specifically, I think communities is it. I think Ditto is the solve to the bootstrap problem. I think people want to join communities. No one's doing communities well. Facebook groups is terrible. They have terrible moderation policies. No matter what Zuck says, they're not going to fix them because it's more driven by the individuals. Reddit has the same issue. No one is doing communities well, and that's where people want to go. They want more small communities. They want more private communities, and they want to know that their content is theirs and there's not people spying on them, which you can't say for any other platform out there that does communities and groups.
So the DJ you referred to, his name is Door with one O. So you can go to primal.net/door with one O.
I was
if you
actually
want to
talking about
follow.
Ollie.
Oh shit. Well, Ollie's
I was
great
talking
too.
about Oliver.
Does he have?
He's a
do you know his
painter.
NPub?
He's a painter. I do know his NPub.
Or if you go to primal.net/Jack, he's retweeted Ollie recently.
Yep.
Um,
Oliver Clegg.
yeah, I guess Door's
Oliver
been
Clegg.
around for a while.
And Door's an OG.
So where were we? Ditto is a Nostr app that's focused on communities. One of the cool things about Nostr is, as Jack said earlier, there's many different Nostr apps. You might hear them called clients sometimes, but I think probably we should be calling them apps. But you can call them whatever the hell you want to call them, because it's more obvious to people. But Ditto is one of them, and the main developer of that project is a man that goes by the name of Alex Gleason. He's an absolute legend among men.
Amazing.
It's great to have him. He's a former Truth Social CTO, Trump's quasi social media. And so on that front, so I have two questions for you, and we'll start with the first one. Do you not see it like, do we not have a bootstrapping issue of like people creating an account but then not really using it? You know, they do their first post, they're like, Nostr's awesome, and then we zap them a bunch, and then we don't see them for months. Is that a problem? Is that something you saw early days of Twitter? Or?
Oh yeah, it's definitely a problem. I mean, I think the first big problem is just discovery, finding who is interesting to follow, and unfortunately, most of the clients right now are giving people that are not relevant to them at all. And you see a bunch of content that's overwhelmingly not relevant, and then you have to figure out how to unfollow these people, and it's just work, and I don't want to do more work, right? So I think Blue Sky actually did something really good here, which is the starter packs, which is I think borrowed from another platform, but here's a pack of accounts you can follow if you have these interests. But again, I think like communities, Ditto, is probably the holy grail. And if you have a tight community of like your friends or your locale, then it's much easier to want to converse every day, because what really made Twitter work was not broadcasting to the world, it was the replies. It was a conversation. And if I see content that's not relevant to me, I'm not going to reply to it. If I see content that I chose to get into because it's like, oh, football or like surfing or whatnot, I'm going to reply to it. And that keeps me going, and that keeps me, that I stay, especially if I'm getting money for it and I can send money. Um, so, like, it's solvable. It's just like, how do you get to conversation, not just posting?
Yeah, I mean, I love the starter pack idea from Blue Sky. I think a bunch of apps will integrate that. Basically, the idea is like you're inviting a friend to join, and you're basically in charge of getting them started. You're in charge of giving them almost um, a personalized experience on their first join, on their first interaction with the protocol. I see in the comments someone called out Oliver's NIP5. It's primal.net/Oliver Clegg with 2 G's.
Yeah, so he's a DJ and a oil painter, and he's been putting up a bunch of his works with some quotes, and like the people are digging it. But like it just takes one of those stones to roll, and like more and more people come. And I don't know why, but there's a moment right now in these past 2 weeks where we're seeing a lot more people who are not Bitcoin adjacent. They feel more art adjacent, or like willing to try things out, because everything happening with TikTok and other things. And if they find community, they'll stick. If they don't, then they'll bounce.
Yeah, it feels like real momentum. What are your thoughts on, like, I feel like Twitter didn't have this problem as much because of where the ecosystem was. The internet was so young. Like, what are your thoughts on just like battling established network effects? Like, WhatsApp absolutely dominates. Facebook completely dominates in terms of network effects. Is that is there a deliberate way to try and break that, or is it
New,
just a slow grind?
new utility. I mean, like we were battling Facebook. Like Facebook was the evil enemy, um, because they had this strategy of like you go into schools, everyone on the school gets on, then you go to cities, everyone in the city gets on, then the world, and like it worked. Um, and they had a ton of utility that we didn't have. We just had one piece, which was broadcast, but the broadcast was so fast and it was so simple, and the 140 characters made everything very digestible instantly, so you could actually see news. And the thing that really turned the corner for us was trends and search. I could search any topic and I could see what was happening in the world, and I could type fire and I could see all the fires happening in the world. I could see that fire was trending. Oh, that's something I didn't know about. I didn't know to search, but now I know that this person died, or this is on fire, or there's an earthquake. Like the earthquake moments were huge for Twitter. New Year's Eve was huge for Twitter because it's just fast, brief, digestible. Like it really focused on speed. Speed was our number one feature, and Facebook was this like big clunky thing that had 100 features, and we were able to break through, but obviously not to their scale because not everyone had something to broadcast, right? And our problem was that tweets would be shown on TV or they'd be shown in newspapers, and people are like, "I see it on TV. Why do I need to download the app? Like I already get the Twitter news. Like it's there." So our reach was immense, but our usage was very very small because not as many people had the reasoning, which is why we shifted more and more towards conversation, because everyone can have a chat every day. Everyone can have a conversation, and we really highlighted replies, and that's what Twitter is. That's what X is today. It's really geared around conversation and encouraging more replies, more conversation.
I mean, I don't know how active you are in X nowadays, but do you not see like for me it seems like it's gone back towards this like broadcast first type of, like, it used to have so much productive discussion. Now I feel like it's just influencers shouting into the world and like PR agencies.
I think the payment stuff definitely changed something.
Well, like paying people for
Yep,
posting,
yep.
piece of the ad revenue cut.
It does incentivize a certain thing, and then like a lot of the indicators of like how many replies in line were taken out of the main timeline, so you couldn't see that. Oh, this is a tweet that actually has a bunch of interesting replies. The thing our algorithm used to do was it would promote one of the the replies as well to the top of the timeline. Whereas today, I think it's only top level tweets. So a lot of the understanding that you would have to like, there's conversation underneath has disappeared. And I think that's a mistake for what it wants to be in terms of usage. But, you know, it, it is what it is.
So it is what it is. I'll make that the quote of the episode. The with Nostr, I kind of see it's interesting, right? Because it's the first time that a lot of, especially um, young people have been exposed to some kind of social app, social protocol, whatever you want to call it, where there is no algorithm. And I think a lot of people find that refreshing, that they have, what it used to be was the standard, right? This idea that you're just basically getting a chronological feed of people you follow, which is what we saw, in the early days of Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. And of course, they all moved to this algorithmic first approach. And I think it's fundamental that you have the ability to have no algorithm. But I think part of the reason why Nostr has been rough around the edges for newcomers right now is because you don't have the choice of adding an algorithm if you want to, in terms of discovery, in terms of seeing content that you might enjoy or want to interact with. How do you think about algorithms in Nostr?
Well, I mean, Twitter took a different path. So like in Facebook, it was all about the algorithm and just like gaming as much engagement as possible. What we decided to do is like you're on you're on the app, and then you go away, and then you come back to it. Let's say after like 3 hours, and you're following like 1,000 people. When you have to go reverse cron through 1,000 people to see like what you missed, like it's what Nostr is today.
Right. It's impossible to do. You can't do that.
It just takes time, and it takes time away from what else you could be doing. So our first algorithm was called While You're Away, and it would try to figure out like what you are most likely to engage with in terms of like what you tend to look at more or you reply to, and it would put 8 of those tweets at the top, and then underneath it's the full reverse cron, and we kept that for 2 years, and then we expanded that, and we allowed you to turn off the algorithm, so you can say, I want the algorithm, I want the for you. That's what for you is, or following, right? That's what it is today. It's the same thing. That hasn't changed at all. And the reason we did that is we realized Twitter was like news and conversation, and you just can't keep up with all of it. So we needed some help to like get you to like, here's what you missed, here's what's trending, here's those things. So it's just a question of like what a particular Nostr client wants to be, and what use case it's trying to solve. Is it trying to solve for the news use case, the community use case? And the beautiful thing about Nostr is it can solve for all those, and they can all be different apps. But like if we solved for communities, it'd be a completely different algorithm than it would be for news. And right now you have something like Primal, which has a trending 24-hour, a most app 24-hour, and then the fire hose. And that feels more like a news use case, but we're not getting the news content on the network. So it's more like the news of your friends or Matt Odell at the top of it every day saying live free or die. It's not really news.
Do you want me to stop saying good morning?
No,
Should I
but
stop saying good
like
morning?
this is the content problem, right? Nostr needs all the content on it. It needs all the content. Like, and we need to like whatever that algorithm is, the trending 24 is looking for established accounts, and it's not trying to find like the trending stuff, the actual trending stuff. And if it tried to find the actual trending stuff of all the Mastodon posts, of all the the blue sky fire hose, of anything we can scrape from the web, then it would be a news destination. But it's a question, do you want it to be? I think so. Like, I think Nostr can be the greatest corpus of human conversation and thought ever created because of the principles of it. But like, we need to build that, right?
But do we not bootstrap that with good mornings? Like, is that?
I mean, we've got enough of that. Like,
But I mean,
we're not going to. There's no escape velocity from good morning. It's too
look,
heavy.
this is something I battle with every morning. Because
and that's why you say good morning. You're trying to remind yourself.
I know there's a subset. I know there's a subset of people that legit resent me. Like it builds up in their head every morning that they see me on the top of trending, saying good morning and posting a music video.
I'm one of those people.
Unfortunately, our friendship perseveres. But then at the same time, there's a lot of people that want to say good morning back, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't be on the top of trending in the first place.
Yeah, so
it's this is one of my inner struggles that I have to deal with every morning.
Yeah, but that's more of a community use case, right? Like you say good morning to your neighbors and your friends and whatnot. And like if we want it to be that, it's going to be as big as a friend circle. If you want it to be global, it has to be news. It has to be something that's actually global relevant. So one thing you could do, for instance, is instead of saying good morning every day and putting a music video and being lazy about it, you could opine on the news of the day. You could take an article that's breaking somewhere and you could actually opine on it, and then people will have a conversation about it, and you keep engaged in that conversation, and then it turns into a different thing.
I take a lot of time and care in picking which music video.
I realize that, but it's a friends group. It's a group chat then. It's just like a friends group chat, and it's going to stay like that forever.
So you want me to opine on the news every morning?
I mean, you're a podcaster, influencer, and anarchist VC.
Why don't you opine on the news every morning? I don't see you doing it.
I've been busy. I'll get back to it.
Do you not even care?
I do care. I'll get back to it. But like, be the change you want to see in the world. If you want that content, you have to make that content, right?
I mean, part of it is like we need to see algorithms that do different things, and people can choose them so that I'm not on the top.
We have those today. Yeah. Don't blame the algorithm for your own lack of desire to make this work. It's as much a development problem as it is a content problem, and you're bringing up the rear on the content.
I try, and I'm not trying to report the news every morning, but
You don't need to report the news.
But good morning. Where do I get the news from?
Everywhere.
That I'm commenting
you see the news everywhere. You see it.
Okay, so why don't you, if you send me a news story every morning?
What are your thoughts on Trump coin? That's newsworthy, no? Like detailed analysis, like you do on your podcast.
Detailed analysis. I mean, you should stay humble and stack sats and not buy Trump coin. I mean, that's
why,
my
though?
analysis.
You gotta tell the people why.
I will say that I had no idea that Phantom Wallet existed, which is like the main way these people interact with Solana meme coins.
Moonshot is another one.
Is Moonshot a different app?
Mm-hmm.
The UX...
They're all at the top of the App Store right now.
The UX for being a day trader or like just a degen swapping this stuff, they really nailed it. It's like very clean. Yeah. So it makes me feel like a boomer. Like I was completely...
Yeah, but this is
not necessarily caught off guard by the existence of the coin. Like I think that was very on brand. A few days before your presidency to launch a cash grab. But the way it was done was I was completely unfamiliar with.
This is a gap both in Bitcoin and Nostr, and the gap is design. Like these people know how to make something fast and the interface fast, such that you know how to use it right away. And the problem historically with Bitcoin and with Nostr is it's been engineering led, and a lot of these engineers do not know how to partner with designers.
Right, they build for engineers.
They build for other engineers, which is great. It's fine, but we're not going to escape velocity. We're not going to reach the horizon with that mindset and with that approach. We just won't. It has to be cohesive. It has to be focused on speed, and you have to have a sense of who you're actually trying to serve. Are you trying to serve everyone, which dictates a certain set of features? Are you trying to serve pro users? Are you trying to serve engineers? And that clarity, you can start one way and then you end up always to the mainstream or maybe a smaller audience, but you gotta pick a lane and then just go for it and just iterate. And I haven't seen that discipline within Nostr or Bitcoin predominantly. There's exceptions, of course, but it definitely holds us back.
I mean, I think you guys nailed the UX on BitKey on the Bitcoin side.
I think we nailed it on Cash App first. It was the fastest, easiest way to buy Bitcoin.
Then you made it worse.
Yeah, I mean, this is the tale of companies. You make something simple, and then it gets worse and worse as you add things, and you don't call, you don't cut, you don't edit. We're in the process of editing. It's going to get better. But BitKey is a it's a new one, right? So it'll eventually have that thing where it gets barnacles and you have to edit.
There's just like a desire to change, right? So it's like constant, like you'll
Desire
make
to
like,
add, and the ad doesn't come with like what are we subtracting, you know, like what are we refactoring? It's just common, and it's no intention. Like let's make our Bitcoin purchasing platform worse. No, it's like let's add this thing and then add this thing, and oh, now where does the Bitcoin thing fit? And if we add this thing, then there's a dependency on that, and then it's like a maze and a labyrinth, and we have to refactor everything. I'm sure you hear this from your companies that you VC over.
is that a verb? VC over?
Yeah, I mean, you can take this conversation, you can replay it tonight. You can go to your companies and you can say, "I'm here to help. I got some advice." Designer.
Do you think all VCs are bad
I think
inherently?
I think the gravity is towards yes, and you have to resist the gravity to be good. And there are some good ones, but the gravity is towards yes.
Okay, I agree with that. Honestly,
I think you're a good one, just to be
you
clear.
think
And there are others that are good ones
it
too.
means a lot. It means a
I
lot.
mean,
coming
I've never
from you.
taken money from you, so I don't know how good you are because that's the ultimate litmus test. But I hear good things.
Well, we have a couple of our founders in the live chat, so if they're
Okay, we're watching the sunset, and do we think we'll see a green flash? Tiny one, tiny green flash on the sunset. This was meant to be.
there, we go. It's a moment. Honestly, since I'm not a professional podcaster, I'm still hung up on you shitting on my good mornings.
It's always
And
the people who say, "I'm not this, I'm not
you
this, I'm not
realize
this, I'm not this,"
I'm
that actually are
like,
those people.
all the freaks know how much sound quality issues I have on a episode by episode basis. So how could I be a professional podcaster?
Yeah, you're an amateur podcaster, but
There
you're a
we go.
podcaster.
Amateur podcaster. I'll take that. Um, we're day 21 of the year. I've done 21 music videos every day.
Yeah.
I'm a man of routine. Like
Yeah, but
this is how I operate. Should I break
are
my
you
routine
making
tomorrow?
content for like people who love music videos?
I'm just setting the vibe.
I know, but
It's a
like,
fun vibe. I like
so
listening to music.
so your job is one post a day, and it comes with a GM and a video, and
No, that's my
and
bare
everyone else
minimum.
has to create the other content.
No, that's my
All
bare.
you other plebs, you have to create the other content
I create
that makes this thing go.
dude. I create so much Nostr content that a lot of people's main negative view of Nostr is that like it's too much Odell.
Well, I think that's also the algorithm. The algorithm needs to be rebalanced and retrained, and also like it's got to decide like what it wants to highlight. Is it highlighting news or is it highlighting like friends? Because right now it's highlighting friends, and it's highlighting the Nostr like big accounts, and like it's just not. We need more. We need more. It has been highlighting some new folks, which I think is great.
Uh, no, just Rob Hamilton's one of 1031 supported founder, and
He's happy.
he zapped us 10,000 sats and said, I don't know if Matt is a great VC. He's on a beach podcasting instead of creating shareholder value for me, crying about how his GM posts aren't bringing about hyper-nosters.
You're such a great VC. He's giving money back. That's
There you
always a
go.
bad sign. That's always a bad sign.
Why is that a bad sign?
They're giving the money back. They're like, we don't need the money in it. We don't
It's
want
like
you in this anymore.
the best KPI. He's in the chat zapping. What else are we going to talk about? Have you watched Mark Zuckerberg's Joe Rogan yet?
I haven't watched it. Tell me about it.
Are you guys
I've seen clips, of course.
You guys are on a first name basis, right? So I'll just call him Mark.
We were on a first name basis. I went over to his house. Like we used to talk, but that fell apart.
So I mean, it seems like Elon and him right now are the juggernauts in big social and big tech social. More so Mark in Facebook, right? Like in terms of billions of users, in terms of user numbers, significantly more, especially globally. And then you have TikTok, which it seems like will probably be owned by one of them in like 6 months, or at least like 50% owned by one of them in 6 months.
Yep.
So I guess before we go there, what is your opinion on the TikTok ban? Since I brought up TikTok.
I think it's stupid. I think it probably has other agendas. that have nothing to do with China trying to program our kids. I think I think people in the US want more control over the content that goes on in TikTok.
And it just was the one that they had no control over because it was
It's China.
China led.
Yes. Which is funny because also in the US companies it's like, we don't want any control over the content. Wink wink. But they want the control.
Yeah, I mean, so that was the majority of Mark's conversation on Rogan, was that he basically said, I mean, to summarize a 3-hour conversation, well, first of all, he said they're no longer going to have tampons in the men's bathroom, but he also said that he is laser focused on being pro free speech, reducing censorship, and that the majority of the pressure was the Biden administration, effectively, and the previous government, and that under Trump, that they're going to be much more free speech oriented. Elon has obviously signaled similar before Mark did that. How do you think about that?
I think number one, like Facebook tends and Meta and Mark, in my view, tend to blow with the wind. I don't think the company has principles. I think they do whatever it takes that advantages themselves in the moment, and they'll switch principles completely based on what's currently happening in the world. And I've seen that at least 4 times now, specifically with free speech, but with other things as well. AI and the metaverse, and you just look at their stances, and they're not a company with strong stances that last because they don't believe in them. They believe in building the biggest, greatest thing ever. And again, like, I respect that, but I don't respect that, you know. Um, and then number two, like, the extent of everything that we got from the Biden administration is in the Twitter files. We got the same from the Trump administration, and I've seen clips where Mark has characterized it as yelling, and like, I don't know. These are not things that, like, we still made decisions based on those inputs. We were not told what to do. We made decisions, and they can make decisions as well. So to put all of it on the Biden administration or any administration, I think is I think is playing a game. And I think it's rewriting history a bit because I was also there. The thing that I worried more about is not the Biden administration; it's the advertisers. Mark didn't have this worry because every advertiser needed to advertise on Meta, and every advertiser needs to advertise on Google. So they don't have to have policy conversations with their advertisers. Whereas Twitter, because it was small and you didn't need to advertise on Twitter, it was like this extra budget. They could change they could say, like, we're removing our whole brands, like Unilever, we're removing our whole brand. And you saw this play out with Elon. um, the fortunate thing is he was private. The unfortunate thing is if you have that play out as a public company, then if the advertisers leave, Wall Street sees it and they sell the stock, and when the stock is sold, it goes down in value. When it goes down in value, you lose employees because they no longer believe it's going up, and then you lose the company. So your hand is forced not by the government. I never thought our hand was forced by the government. Our hand was definitely forced by advertisers and our very business model. And like, we just had to do things that made sure that that entity was more or less happy. Now, we did other things as well, and we certainly went too far in many, many places. I fully admit that, and I've tweeted about it and said it and written about it. But as a public company, this is what I ultimately realized: you can't have a CEO over these things. You can't. Like, no matter how good this person is, he or she can be called to Congress, can be corrupted, can be assassinated, can be kidnapped, can be taken in a closed room and told to do something and not tell anyone about it. That's the reality. So if you choose to be on these platforms, you have to have that in your calculus. And they may align with you today, but they're probably not going to align with you tomorrow. And that's the risk you're taking. The benefit of Nostr is that that can't exist. no one can take it down, no one can shut it down, and no one can move it in a particular way that benefits only them. And that's what I realized. That's why I left.
Well said. I want to dig deeper in that, but I also want to say what's happening in the live chat right now is a perfect example of the problem with modern social media. So we have people saying "full pardon" in all caps for Ross, which would be absolutely massive, and not a single link to a source. You see
Mm,
this? It's like classic. I
yeah.
don't know if Nostr fixes that. I don't know if we can reward it in certain ways. Maybe Zaps help fix that. But if any of
No,
you,
but this is good because this is a vibe. This is a vibe we would see on Twitter too. Like you would have a source, but you need some sort of algorithm to bubble up. Okay, where is this source information? Where is this actually happening?
yeah, one of you freaks, if you have an actual source besides David Bailey saying a full pardon would be awesome, please link it in the
Oh,
comments.
there might be one right there.
Oh, look, a primal link. But I want to talk about the. I want to. I want to talk about the Twitter files. Okay, so it's hearsay from a blue check. Okay, we'll stay up to date on that. I be absolutely massive to have that done tonight. I mean, everyone was thinking his sentence was going to get commuted. A pardon would mean that that he's actually not guilty, rather than time served. So I do wonder what that means for returning his Bitcoin, and if there's any implications there. But I'm not a lawyer. I want to talk about the Twitter files real quick. A lot of people have used the Twitter files against you. Um, what do you think the main takeaway? First of all, were they actually accurate? And then what is the main takeaway people should have from them, in your opinion?
Um, well, I mean, there's accurate artifacts in there, but I think people mainly stopped at the headlines and they didn't really go through. And like our team pushed back on a lot. Some things we agreed with and we did, and other things we didn't. And Um, I think they were all rational choices at the time based on the situation we're in. But again, like this is what happens in a public company when you have a business model that is dependent upon engagement and people feeling like it's a safe, clean space. That's what the advertisers want, right? Otherwise, you get just really, really crappy direct response ads. And that could be your thing, but that's not what we were going for. So it's a business decision ultimately. And as I said, like when we banned Trump, I think we did the right thing for Twitter, the business, but the wrong thing for the internet. And I tweeted about this, and like this is exactly why we put more and more funding into Blue Sky and put and why I care about these protocols so much now is because like the just a company owning it and having one person in charge is always going to have some point in time where it is corrupted and they're making a choice for the whole, which they shouldn't be able to make. And it's going to happen again and again and again. Doesn't matter what platform you tell me it is, whether it be X, it's already happened. TikTok, it's already happened. Meta and Threads, no matter how much they change their moderation policies, it's going to happen. Nostr is the only one I know of that you can't. Blue Sky, it's happened, which again, why I left and why I stepped off the board and why we went all in on Nostr.
I mean, they actually use it as a argument for Blue Sky. It's like a positive, which is interesting.
Yeah, I believe they made all the same mistakes we made,
So,
and like just did not learn from what we need to learn in moderation and content and building systems.
so to your point, do you regret banning the sitting president of the United States?
I regret that we had to. I feel like
Right.
we had to as a company because if we didn't, um, I don't think our business would be around.
You would lose advertisers, not
We
government
would lose
action.
advertisers. The government wasn't pushing us to do anything. We had many requests from the Trump administration for takedown stuff, like probably on the order of the inputs we would get from the Biden administration and the GOP and the Democrats. Like that We saw everything from everyone. We didn't take direction from them unless they were security risks or acts of violence, or CSAM or anything like that. But we took input.
So I see Rob Hamilton in the comments bringing up people linking on Nostr, posting screenshots of this. It looks like Ross was just granted a full and unconditional pardon by real Donald Trump. Words cannot express how grateful we are. President Trump is a man of his word and just saved Ross's life. Ross is a free man. That came from the official Free Ross account, it looks like.
And that's great.
That's wonderful.
Amazing.
Massive news. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day, freaks. Glad you're all here with us. And it's a beautiful sunset, too. Really appreciate it. Do you think there's something inherently wrong with Nostr in its early days when you're bootstrapping it to post a screenshot of something that's breaking on X?
No.
Should that be something?
The more content, the better. The more content, the better. I think all the content in Nostr, like, how do we get it to be the greatest repository, the biggest repository, the greatest corpus of human communication, thought, images, videos, photography? And then what's lacking then is discovery, search, and trending. And I guarantee you give people a problem that big, they'll want to solve for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird. I see like people get angry about it when you do post a screenshot. First of all, if X wasn't a walled garden, I could post a link and you could go to it without an account. The only way to really easily share it is with a screenshot. But it seems like something we should be incentivizing. Like I'd zap that if someone is screenshotting important breaking news in the Bootstrap phase.
And we can build technology to like read the screenshot and make it into a more text format that can be searched on Nostr. Like, all this is possible. It's just like, what are we building and like why? And I think like that having all thought, having all communication, Nostr is the only one that can do it because it's the only neutral party. It's the only neutral protocol that can actually host this. Our server costs are extremely low in comparison to everything else, inclusive of Blue Sky. It's very easy to set a relay up. It's very easy to set a client up. It's very easy to use the API and inject stuff into it. So, like, what are we waiting for? Like, let's put it all in.
Agreed. I'm just appreciating that Ross got a full pardon. That's wonderful.
No, it's incredible.
Do you think that so? And by the way, this is why I think some people think Nostr is a distraction for Bitcoiners, because we've been chatting for an hour and 40 minutes. We've definitely talked about Nostr
Good
more
number.
than Bitcoin.
Yeah.
One of the arguments, so a lot of my perspective is based on my experience in Bitcoin. And one of the arguments we've heard in Bitcoin for years is the biggest threat to Bitcoin is governments, improving their monetary policy, making their money better, having it work better, having it not debase people, and then people wouldn't have a need for Bitcoin. Obviously, that'll never happen. Like, humans just inherently, if there's an ability to be corrupted, they get corrupted. How do you feel about someone like Elon on X, or someone like Mark with Meta, them adding Bitcoin or them adding algorithmic choice? Like, do you think that is a real concern in terms of Nostr adoption? Like, if Nostr is successful, will they be able to compete in that way by improving their own centralized?
I mean, the way
platforms?
I saw it early on is like, if Nostr, or if one of these decentralized open protocols inspires someone to do the right behaviors, then we all win. So Like if if Elon builds in algorithmic choice, which I hope he does, and I've talked to him about it. If he builds in Bitcoin, which we actually had in the past, but I think they shut it down. It was just tipping on the profile. It was a start, but we didn't get to finish it. Um, then and that's inspired by like seeing the use case on Nostr. Then Nostr wins because we all win, right? And if it takes away from Nostr usage, but like those use cases are there, I think we all still win.
Yeah, that's best case scenario, right? You want them to copy good freedom oriented things.
But also, like their incentive, the only way these business model works is as much content as possible. So why would you not take content from Nostr and put it in Twitter to put your algorithms on top of it and sell ads on it? Because you have more content to deal with, you have more things to trend, and they could be a client that helps Nostr because by definition, it's the only one that will have the most because it's neutral. So, like, this was my argument for why we start the protocol and why we fund the protocol in the first place. When we had investors, we started the idea of Blue Sky, why are you doing this thing? Because we get more content. More content means more revenue for us and a greater business over time.
There's another piece here too where we're watching, right now LLMs, AI are all the hype. Um, they're very hyped. They're very new. We're watching Elon. It appears, at least from my perspective, watching him attempt to monetize X with XAI. With I guess users are familiar with it as Grok. Um, how do you think about that aspect changing the, I guess not the roadmap, but how X gets built out? Because it seems to me like the approach right now seems to be, you don't want to, if he adopts an open protocol, if he adopts something like Nostr, he's removing his proprietary access to this real-time database that Grok is using, right? It's like Grok's proprietary advantage is that you have a bunch of accounts around the world that are providing commentary on breaking news, and so they're able to provide this real-time um, these real-time updates that the LLM is then able to feed into your answers. How does that affect how things proceed?
But the more the better. Like he he's going to have the best proprietary information if he has more people using Twitter the client or X the client.
Like the app itself.
Yes, yes. So, and if XAI is built into that and Grok is built into it, it's extra utility that you can't find on other platforms, right? So that means that even if you were to give all the content to Nostr and open it to the protocol, he still has two very compelling things like XAI or Grok that can make that experience much better. It can find things faster, it can find better things, it can find deeper things, and you can't find that on any other clients. So, still wins.
But it takes almost a leap of faith, right, to give up that
Yeah,
proprietary information
yeah.
flow.
But it's the same leap of faith that people took with the web,
Right.
and with email. And look at those businesses. I mean, look at the search business as an example of this. Like, Google was able to build one of the most efficient businesses in the world on the back of search and the web and email. Two open protocols, entirely open protocols they didn't control. And everyone had inputs and outputs to it. There are models here that work for companies using open protocols such as Nostr. It's just a matter of time.
Why
You
do you,
may be funding one of those companies that figures it out.
but I think 1031 is unique in that we actually fund companies that build on open protocols and build in the open. Like, I think it's kind of rare. I think what we really see usually is particularly startup capital, like VC equity capital, prefers proprietary walled gardens, traditional moats. I think it's changing, but it changes very slowly, it seems.
Yeah, it is. It's
Yeah.
going to be a slow. It's going to be a slow burn.
It's crazy how as it gets dark, it's now like the waves are battling the noise of the insects. It's the loudest studio I've been in a while. Okay, one last topic, and then we can wrap. Um, unless you have something else you want to talk about. So
No,
in my time, I've had I've had 3 aha moments where I've just seen this incredibly viral, organic, developer-led movement. And that the first one was Bitcoin, and the second two were Nostr and Cashu. Cashu being this Chaumian eCash protocol for Bitcoin. I like to say Bitcoin's an open protocol for money. Nostr is an open protocol for speech and comms. Lightning is an open protocol for batch Bitcoin payments, and eCash is an open protocol for Bitcoin banks. I know you're also seem to be pretty fascinated about Cashew specifically. How do you think about it?
I mean, those are definitely my three as well. Like it just moves super fast, and the developers behind each one of those. What resonated with me is they're very principled, and they stick with the principles. Like that to me was the early internet. That's what kept me. That's what got me there. That's what kept me. And I see that with those. Um, I think Cashew is really important because it's that accessibility layer. It gives, and it goes back to communities, by the way. I think Nostr communities, such as Ditto and Cashew, are the perfect marriage because you have your own way to exchange ideas and money, and it's all self contained, and it feels very tight, and it feels comfortable. And that's what I think we're lacking right now. It just feels too big. There's no boundaries, and what do I do here? People know exactly what to do in their neighborhood. They know exactly what to do with their friend group, with their poker group, with their surfing group. They they know, and like that's what we need to build for. And I think Cashew is a part of that because I don't think just pure Bitcoin or Lightning works in that sense. In the with the speed and the way that we need. So I'm super excited about it. I think the one you left out because nothing is on the horizon yet is intelligence.
Are you gonna explain why?
Because we have the open source LLMs, but like we have no real momentum behind like decentralizing intelligence, taking it away from the hands of the companies, and having another option. Like we need that other option, and it's probably with agent systems, and agents on Nostr would be phenomenal because it is a
Yeah.
defined protocol, and like they can roam about and do things for you, do tasks. But if I had to look in anyone's space that's going to feel that way, it's probably going to be around agents. And I think there's a good intersection with obviously Bitcoin and obviously um, Nostr and probably Cashew as well.
It's probably it's like Nostr and Cashew combined,
Yeah,
right? Where like
exactly.
LLMs and users are paying each other with Cashew. They're communicating over Nostr, and then Nostr signed posts are the main
The identity.
not only the identity but also the single best data set for LLMs to source from, right? Because they have
Yes,
the verifiable reputations.
yes,
Everything is signed. You know it hasn't been altered.
yes,
You can use it without permission.
100%.
So that's definitely the next piece, but it's still very nascent, right? Like, have you seen anything really?
I've seen nothing very interesting yet, but like that's why it's exciting as well. Like, who's going to be the first? Like, who's going to be the first to like, actually step into that?
And
I think there's
yeah,
there's one Venice. I don't know the details behind it, but there's some energy there, but it's just not cohesive yet.
I mean, I think like in practice, what it'll probably look like for end users is kind of what Grok has been doing, what XAI has at least been towing into. And I would
But
say,
not just an LLM,
right,
an agent that actually can go and do work and tasks and
that's
then come back with
personalized.
value. Yeah, yeah, that you own in the same way that you own your content. You own these agents. You own the like this mini LLM, if you will.
So it's like
Um,
Clippy, but
yeah,
better.
exactly. And you can send
How can
them.
I help?
You can send them to battle. How can I help? Like a VC.
So how do we bootstrap that? Do we? I
Someone's got to build it. We got to build it.
think if we say enough good mornings, maybe it'll happen.
I don't think so.
Um, I like to give people actionable advice on this show. Um, do you have, if someone wants to get started with Bitcoin, what are your favorite Bitcoin wallets?
um, it's changed over time. I'll give three. The first was probably Moon. MUUN,
2 U's.
and I just they know they really understood design. They understood accessibility. I've converted a bunch of people who are new to Bitcoin because of Moon, because they could get it and they felt safe about it right away because of the recovery mechanisms. The second one is probably is it Phoenix?
Yeah, Phoenix Wallet, the Lightning Wallet.
Yep. Because
Amazing
of the
wallet.
lightning aspects and because they were starting to like, for anyone who like really wants to use it. And then the third is Bicky, who for whoever doesn't want to lose it, because I think we've done and the team has done a really good job at like building something where it's almost impossible to lose your Bitcoin, and people understand it right away. And I've watched older people and younger people who are brand new to Bitcoin fully set up a wallet, receive Bitcoin, and feel good about it. So I'm predominantly using the Bicky wallet right now, but I still love Moon, I still love Phoenix, and I try to mix them up.
Okay, so Bitcoin. Do you have any Cashu wallets you can recommend?
Uh, the main one, Kelly's main one,
Cash
the web, the PWA,
Cashu.me.
yeah, the PWA,
Cashu.me is great. Mini
because you don't have to go through the app store. There's no permission.
Yeah.
It works. It's super solid. They have backup in I think backup seed phrases and recoveries in beta right now. It works. I tried it.
Yeah, we went into depth. I had Callie on the show twice now, a few weeks ago. But Cashu.me, CASHU.me. And then there's many Nostr apps, but Nostr apps for beginners, people that just want to get started that haven't used it yet.
Beginners, I point people to Primal.net, Primal on the App Store, the Google Play, only because it's on those three platforms. It's probably the most like Twitter that you'll experience, or Threads, or kind of what you expect. Um, and it gets you in very fast. But the most important thing is it has a built-in wallet, so you can actually feel zaps right away. Um, Damas is another great one. You have to hook up your own wallet to it. It's much faster in my experience in terms of like actual speed, and it's much more pure in terms of like the protocol. So if you care a lot more about the attributes of Nostr and what makes it decentralized and censorship resistant, I think Damus is that. Amethyst on Android is a kitchen sink. If you want like the WeChat of Nostr, it's Amethyst. If you have an Android device, um, those are good ones. There's so many.
Have you used Nostr with the U? Nostr?
I've used it. Yeah.
I like that client too, that app. Yako Hone has a built-in Bitcoin wallet now. I want to see more with built-in Bitcoin wallets.
Yes, it makes it easier for new people.
I think every Nostr app should have a Bitcoin wallet, but I'm a little bit biased. But I think those are good recommendations. And I would just say to anyone who's thinking about it, just download one of those Nostr apps and say good morning every morning.
I don't know about that.
Is a good place to start. Or
there's enough good mornings. Like, let's get some other content.
Provide your commentary on breaking news.
Like Ross being freed.
Yeah.
Like,
I bet you right
write
now,
some essays like on Nostr Reads. Like,
I bet you right now, if you open up Primal, there's better commentary on Ross being freed and a more joyous occasion than X right now.
I'm sure. Like Reads has like as an equivalent to Substack, and you can write full on essays in Nostr. You can push them to Twitter, you can push them to Instagram, to TikTok, keep them on Nostr. But like, the most important thing is you own that content. It can never be taken down. It can never be altered. And you can sign it with your identity, and everyone knows it's actually you. So try it out.
Yeah, no, I think Reads is really promising. I want to see more. There's not enough apps that support live streams yet. I think that's something that Twitter did pretty well, and now X is doing quite well.
Yep.
And like right now, the only two apps I know of that do it on mobile are Nostr and Amethyst. So I'd like to see more of them support that. So Reads and that, and then like Instagram stuff, right? We're seeing Pablo with Olas, which is still quite early, but
Yeah.
I would like to see more of this I'm biased to the quote unquote microblogging tweet style. That was always my favorite way to consume and participate. But to see more formats, that's the beauty of Nostr, right? Is you can use it how you want to use it, and it's an interoperable protocol would be awesome.
100%.
Jack, this was a pleasure. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap?
Thank you, Marty. I mean, Matt. No, we
Wow.
covered a lot. We
Well,
covered a lot. Thank you.
um,
It was a
hopefully,
beautiful sunset. I think the timing was perfect. It's
hopefully,
starting to get a little bit buggy.
hopefully, we'll do this same time next year, maybe.
Yeah, let's do it.
And
21st January.
huge shout out to all the freaks who continue to support the show. We got a lot of zaps today. I see Jack Mallers was the largest one with 100,000 sats. Dispatch has no ads or sponsors. It's purely supported by Bitcoin donations.
Has Marty zapped?
So thank you for he did because he wanted his advertisement for his podcast in the feed.
Okay.
But I appreciate the zap, Marty. You could have sent it from your personal account instead of your podcast account, but yeah, this was awesome. And huge shout out to Ross, to Lynn, his mother. I'm incredibly relieved that he is free now. It's been a long time coming. I urge people to give him some space. You don't have to badger him. If he wants to speak publicly, he'll speak publicly when he's ready. He's gone through quite a lot. I said similar to with Assange when Assange was freed earlier last year, which was also massive. Give them some space. These guys are legends. Also, huge shout out to David Bailey. He has really put a lot of effort into making this the issue, and Bitcoin Policy Institute for really shepherding it and making it a priority among many other things that could have been a priority with this administration, and of course to President Trump himself for signing it. I think a lot of people thought it wasn't going to happen, so it's absolutely beautiful to see. Jack, thank you. It's a
Thank you.
pleasure.